All right. Hello, everybody. This is Crispy Cody from the Crispy Reviews podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Marc Laidlaw. And
Hey,
hello,
Cody.
welcome. How's it
Hi,
going?
thank you. It's going well. This is a great, exciting uh, occasion for me. Like, first time I get to talk about the album and music in general.
Yes,
So
very
thanks so
excited to
much.
talk about it. Yeah. So on February 7th, you released your album After the Pulse. And I find it very interesting because it's labeled as so many different genres on Bandcamp. It's labeled as nine different genres, 10 if you want to include Los Angeles as a genre. I don't know why it's listed on there as a genre, but it is. It's alt rock, electronic, alt country, alt twang, experimental, folkadelic, indie rock, psychedelic rock, and synth pop. So it has lots of different things that it's uh,
I
taken from there.
Experimental might have been carried over from some other stuff I posted on there. I feel like I'm partly responsible for all the confusion.
Well, ultimately, I think there were some experimental moments on the album and stuff. So I felt like it was on par having that label in there. So definitely more psychedelic rock, alt country, or as you said, Americana. You know, it's kind of like that Americana style prior before us jumping into this. But I
Mhm.
really love the album. It came out in February 7th, like I said. And I think it's very interesting. You put an album description. So for me, I was just viewing this from Spotify, right? And before doing any research before the interview, I came to Bandcamp and I found the album description and I was like, oh, there's a whole description here that kind of lays the groundwork for what this thing is, you know? And I didn't know that prior to like listening to the record. So reading this kind of realigned myself with like, oh, okay, this is the kind of storytelling that we're going into here. And if I may, I'll go ahead and read it. So
Yeah, go for it.
it starts with after the global EMP attack took down the digital grid, we were forced to fall back on our old instruments, acoustic and electric, and our oldest instrument, our voice. A few analog synths survived amongst the ruins, wobbly and out of tune, but beloved all the same. These are the songs we composed with them, made out of whatever memories we hadn't surrendered to the AIs, meant to sing around the smoldering dumpster fire of our former lives. It's very poetic. I love how it's like serene. It creates like that setting that you need when listening to this record because there's definite moments that just really stood out. And I can't wait to get into that. But I want to pick your brain about the record first, of course.
Sure.
So let's go ahead. I would like to get started with this question of so after the Pulse features tracks like Mama Never Went Electric and Hey Lady Hey. So can you share the stories or themes that inspired these songs?
Well, yeah, Hey Lady Hey is actually, I think it's the oldest song on the album, and the whole project for me and that little description of like the sort of post uh electromagnetic pulse dystopia where we're sitting around the smoldering dumpsters, it kind of comes from the fact that I found my way into music doing electronic music like entirely. I was back in 2020. The pandemic that most of the world went through was like the second lockdown that I've been through in the space of a couple years. And the first lockdown was weather related, and we were stuck in our neighborhood for like a year and a half. And I kind of went through everything I had ever done to amuse myself in isolation. So by the time the COVID lockdown came around, I needed to do something totally new. So I started doing music. Um, and I was all on my laptop in the box in Ableton, learning to use Ableton patches. And that was a blast. And I uh, started learning to use synths, external hardware and external gear, which I hadn't realized I could actually buy synthesizers and learn to play them because when I was a kid, I was really in love with the Switched On Bach and album I had that was everything you ever wanted to hear on the Moog, but were afraid to ask for. Uh, Favorite early albums, but at that time, synthesizers just seemed like this very remote, expensive thing that nobody could actually, a kid definitely couldn't access any more than a personal computer didn't exist at that point. All these things are the size of your garage.
Yeah.
So when I got into these in the early 2020s, I went all in on electronic stuff and a lot of solo. I just did what I could. We were all kind of in isolation, and I was in isolation. But I found this way of putting, boy, I could make a patch in Ableton, and then I could make a sound through my microphone, and I could start to collage and paste these things together, and gradually learn to build songs out of that. But the one thing that I kind of missed was doing this with other people and collaborating, and sort of in my past, the most fun I've had usually is just collaborative stuff with other creative people. So I wanted to start some songs that were meant to be played live, sung live, played with other people, played with a band, and since this is as much as the electronic stuff, that was the sort of music that I loved. Granddaddy. I always mention Granddaddy because I think that influence is all over this album and the Americana kind of vibe. So I came out of just as kind of as a pandemic and things started to open up. Um, I had moved from where I lived before. I was on Kauai for a few years, and I moved to Los Angeles. And as things opened up, like, hey, there's this whole music community here, and maybe there are some people who want to play with me. So, and then I wanted to have some music that would work in that context, that would rely on other people to play the instruments I can't play, because I really can't play much of anything outside of the cut and paste DAW environment. I have a little bit of rhythm guitar, and that's about it. So um, that was kind of the nugget of the idea behind the album. And when all the songs were close to being finished and I didn't have a name for it, I kind of came back to that image of, okay, I was trying to make songs that could play with other people. Hey, what if the power went out and all you had was acoustic guitars and drums, and you could sit around and play that? It would be nice to have some stuff that I could actually sing and play that didn't rely on, my laptop being updated and my audio interface working and all this stuff that's kind of out of your control. So and Hey Lady Hey is interesting because if you go back to my YouTube channel, where I've kind of been posting things
Pretty
as a
regularly.
journal, yeah, since the
Yeah.
start. I started on SoundCloud as sort of a daily journal of my musical diary.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a song called Hey Batori. I think it's called Hey Batori. It's had a bunch of names over time, and it's all done with synths. And I kind of pieced it together out of synthesizers and weird sounds. And that song was very much about coming out of the pandemic in a way, even though it not literally so, but you could tell at the time I wrote it, that's kind of where my head was.
Hmm.
So when we were fleshing out the album, um, I thought about bringing that song back because I enjoyed the lyrics in it, and I enjoyed singing it, but so much of the song was made out of synth effects and weird digital effects. I wasn't quite sure if it was possible. So I asked, I played it for my producer, Ryan Pauly, and we would sit around and listen to stuff. And I go, do you hear anything here? I mean, I'm not so sure. It's the most dated song to me, and it references year 2020 and the pandemic. And yet that's kind of the early point where I feel like the album might have been born. That was like as far as back as I wanted to go. So
So it's been roughly 5 years in the making since the pandemic lockdown that you've been twiddling
Yeah,
and kicking around these rocks and stones of
al-
ideas.
almost 5 years of me just figuring out music. The
Yeah,
album came together last year,
yeah.
pretty much complete, but some of the songs go back farther than that. Sorry,
Wow.
I just went off down the
No,
tunnel there.
yeah, you're good. I like long-winded answers because it paints a bigger story to understand where your head's at and how things came to be, you know. That's what makes the album. So it's really cool.
Well,
Um,
hilarious. One more thing about
yeah.
that song was it's got an adrenochrome reference in it, which got it banned on YouTube at one point because it was just the word adrenochrome in the post. Apparently, Flag made their robots think it was an anti-vax
Oh,
song or
really?
something. So I've had been fighting that a while. I had another song just that was an ambient musical track was banned by YouTube. There's no lyrics at all. It had frog sounds in it, and one of my theories was that if you turn on captions for some frog noises, it sounds like "destroy the system" or something like that.
Really? Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, some robot was hearing something it we're not supposed to say, I guess, and it banned an ambient track.
Huh.
So I try not to commit too hard to one platform because you never know when you're going to get banned
Yeah, no. I mean,
by
it's
the
really
robots.
interesting how these algorithms like to look and how they process the information and what they're programmed to flag. Because even myself, when I'm using like the podcasts and stuff on Instagram, I've been flagged for interesting things too. And I'm like, how does this even correlate to me being flagged for this? Like, either for a weird comment or anything like that. It just doesn't really make any sense how these algorithms really work. And why are we being censored is the other thing that I always think too, so aren't we
Well,
American? It's under our
does
constitution to not
does
like,
it feel better
yeah.
to be censored by a robot than like a moral authority?
Eh,
I mean, you can't
yeah.
argue. I've never had any luck arguing like, hey, there's actually not even any words in this. They just, you know, there's nobody there. There's no human actually
Yeah,
looking
I
at
know
any
if
of
you
it.
like send in emails and stuff, you can probably get a second opinion or an appeal. But
Yeah.
sometimes that's a lot extra of a process to go through. But that's frustrating as an artist, especially when you're posting these videos and they're just getting banned for no reason. So
Yeah. It's one of those things that makes you start looking for options for other platforms. And, I start thinking about hosting my own music on my own website and stuff like that. But
yeah.
I, that's just something I'm not interested in all the work associated with that. What was the other song that you asked about?
So it was Mama Never Went Electric.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I was asking if you could share the stories or the themes that inspired those songs.
So Mama Never Went Electric is kind of just I just wanted that's another one that I wrote that was originally all synths. And I actually didn't even know how to play it. I couldn't figure out what the chords were. And I I kind of trotted that out in a session with my producer and another musician, and I'm like, "Do you guys know how to play this?" So they immediately found the bass line, and we started having fun with it. And so it kind of went with that. It was just a way to have fun. Like this one is really fun to sing and fun to play, but we had to find that live instrument analog for the stuff that I had done with synths. And
Yeah.
it was very much an attempt to do like a like Roger Miller kind of vibe song. Like I grew up on King of the Road and those
Mm,
great Roger Miller hits. So that I mean that's another thing. I'm old, so the songs of the '60s that I heard when I was a kid,
yeah.
they're still in there somewhere. And that one was like Roger Miller and that Elvis song "Coming in Loaded"
Yeah.
from his Hawaii movie. I just I wanted to have fun with these things too, and like I
Yeah.
know I haven't played these live yet, but I've played them with the band when we're recording, and I know they're really fun. So I kind of am looking forward to wow, I think this would be fun to sing and play for an audience. So
I
it was
agree.
kind of that. and also I watched somebody. I played the song in a songwriting class, and somebody said, "This is like when someone you love just goes down a terrible rabbit hole, and you still love them, but you just you can't follow them in there." And I think we all saw a lot of this happen, especially in
Yeah.
the pandemic. And
Is that what
um,
inspired the song Impatiently too? Because you're just kind of impatiently waiting off to the side, watching this loved one go down this rabbit hole
uh,
of no.
not really. That one was to me, Impatiently is more of like a stripped down song, just about emotions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think in songwriting, people will ask me, well, who's that song about? I'm like, well, it's kind of about me. I like a more, if I notice something in myself, like noticing a negative thing that I do is a great thing to project onto a fictional character in a song.
Mm.
And then,
Okay.
you know what? Songs are, every song is sort of a little bubble and a little world. And sometimes it can just be, there's an emotion I'm trying to understand or a situation. And
Yeah.
then the fun of that is figuring out how to express it in words that are fun to say and sing and have
Yeah.
a rhythm.
I enjoy the lyric in Mama Never Went Electric when it says, "'Cause Mama said, school's for fools. We learned to read from the cover of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band LP." I was very curious to know, was that a record that really impacted you? Like you really
Oh
enjoyed
yeah.
the Beatles and stuff? And
Yeah, I think that
I'm a
was,
really big Beatle head. I love the Beatles. So
I go back, Sergeant Pepper was the first album I remember getting as a gift when I was a kid that was like, this is my album. And I spent a lot of time, of course, staring at the jacket and reading the lyrics and
yeah,
all that. That was an important one for me. So there's worse things to grow up reading.
that is true. But that's really cool that you really tied that in. So is the song basically about like your childhood from what you like dealt with your mom by any
No,
chance?
no,
No,
not
it's
at
just
all.
this fictional
Yeah,
character
it's
that you
all,
created for
yeah,
this
it's a
EMP.
character.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it maybe it's based on a few people I've known, little bits and pieces, but for instance, my mom loves that song because she doesn't see herself in it, so it's easy for her to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a lot of, and also songwriting is so interesting because I mean, my background is in writing fiction, and I would write a lot of first person fiction, and my favorite kind of first person story is, so first I'll think about my least favorite type of first person narrative is where the narrator is like super smart and always right, and in the end they're proven right, and the story's all about how cool and awesome they are. So that those are the worst. Like as soon as,
Ego.
if I'm reading one of those and there's no irony, and I don't, but I love when a narrator just thinks they're cool and they think they're awesome, and you slowly realize, oh my God, this person's a fool.
Mm.
Um, and so some level of irony in there. So I always enjoy writing stories like that. Um, and in songs, it's the same thing. Like when you're singing as I, if I'm singing, I am doing this, I'm doing that. It's not me, Marc Laidlaw. It's a character singing. So you've got to come up with the character who's telling the story, singing the song. Um, and that's really fun. And it's kind of theater, and you come up with a persona, switching from song. I feel like some performers pick a persona for everything, and they do everything from that character. I don't think I could. I mean, I know I can never do that, but like in all my stories, I would. It's exploring a different character or a different part of, an aspect of a character. So the I is always. I guess I like to play with that a lot. Who's narrating? Who's telling the story? Who's singing the song? And then the other thing I really like nested narratives. The Solaris song in there, for instance, it. I think it's confusing unless you're looking at thinking of it in terms of quotation marks. Like the
Mm-hmm.
person telling the story is telling something that was told to them
Was
by
passed down.
Solaris. So
Yeah.
you're hearing this is how it's reported, but the person singing the song is actually singing someone else's song. So It's a little
It's
confusing, but I love that's like that Hall of Mirrors thing. Like
no,
this,
I'm
just singing
I'm
that.
really happy that you brought that up because in that song, when I listen to it, I'm thinking exactly what you're just saying is from the singer as you're singing the song and projecting this out. I'm listening and obtaining it, but I'm not absorbing what is actually being said. What's actually being said is that there's this person who's passing on this story down to somebody else. And I only realized that after not only listening to it, but I had to pull up the lyrics for it on Spotify. And I was reading the lyrics instead of listening, and it all
Yeah.
made sense after the fact. And I was like, oh, okay, this is not what he is singing and making as like a song. What he's trying to say is like, this is somebody who's trying to pass the story down to somebody else. And that's why there's these quotation marks and everything that are around these items and things. So it really portrays really well when you're reading it. And it's hard to master it into a song, right? But you do it really well. It just takes a few listens to
I,
understand, I feel.
I think we're used to it as listeners that we have people will say, "Hey, there's a story that my grandpa used to tell us." And
Yeah.
then you tell that story and everybody knows that you're telling the story that your grandpa used to tell. And
Yeah.
the people in that story are all saying their own lines of dialogue. Like I think we're actually pretty good at visualizing this in a storytelling sense because we grew up hearing we talk to each other this way and we tell stories this way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to question that and overthink it when you're doing something like create a song because you're like, oh, who will understand? But I think we can trust ourselves. Like, yeah, this is how we communicate. So people will get it, even if they don't get it on the first time. This kind of gives you layers to peel back. Uh,
Yeah.
if I mean, I'm very honored that anyone would listen to one of these once, let alone more than once. But if they do spend the time to listen more than once, I would want them to be rewarded by, oh, a little more understanding. And here's the thing I didn't see the first time. I mean, the first time through, this is why I wanted the music to be great. And I reached out to people who I thought could make the music worth listening to the lyrics. Like
Yeah.
first say there were no lyrics. Would you want to listen to this song? Yes, all this music is super fun to listen to, even if you strip away the vocals.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, now it's the music is catchy, so maybe you want to give people something to listen to and sing along with, and every now and then go, oh wait, I know what is that line about again? So
Yeah.
that's what makes it fun for me to listen to these and to write them. Like, oh, there's stuff I didn't even really realize is in there, but if you follow the logic of imagery and poetry and the logic of language, stuff just emerges out of that because we've got this amazing structure of language to draw on that has all these connections kind of baked into it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, words that sound alike could be puns or they can have, you know,
Other
deep meaning.
meanings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very special, especially coming from yourself. This is what it's about. It's, reflecting that to everybody to understand and learn. And that's what I really like. That's why I reached out and wanted to talk about that lyric that you said for Mama Never Went Electric about Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. So to me, that was one that I immediately grasped onto the very first listen. And I was like, oh, whoa, he just said Sergeant Pepper's in there. So obviously that's some type of influence for him. And maybe not in the sound, but maybe in the lyrical kind of scheme or in that
Also, I
kind of
mean,
sense.
we know it's a cultural touchstone. Everybody knows Sergeant Pepper, so I don't think there's hardly anybody on earth at this point who wouldn't connect to that and have an association with it.
I
And
mean, I make a shocked face. I only make a scared face because there's a lot of people that are
yeah,
my
yeah,
age or
who
younger
don't know
who
the Beatles.
definitely do not even know who the Beatles are. They don't even know who Paul McCartney is. I've had those conversations and people are like, who's that? I don't even, I'm like, wow, where have you
Yeah.
been
Oh,
under a
yeah.
rock?
I had a music teacher. This was even in the early '80s. The one music class I took in college, I think the teacher was making a joke about how some students think that Paul McCartney was just that guy in Wings, and kind of didn't really. Even
Oh,
then, the Beatles were already being forgotten.
that's
But
true.
with the Peter Jackson documentaries and stuff, there's probably more people watching Disney shows who are going to discover the Beatles through
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
I mean, they're
anyway,
always their
for my,
marketing team is always trying to like keep them relevant or refreshed for everybody to remember them. I wanted to add in here real quick. There was another line in that song that really caught my attention because I thought it was hilarious. But she said, the earth was flat and the moon is fake. It's a big conspiracy. So it really adds to how she really isn't in touch with anything, this character at all. And the other line that you said was like she never checks her emails and stuff as well. So I was just like, I love this character that you portray. Like it's somebody who quite literally lives under a rock, who's reading the back of like old vinyls, and they're just so out of touch with what is going on in the world that we're living in today, you know.
but she's your mama, and you
And you gotta
gotta
love
love
her.
her. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's definitely the
yeah,
contrast. That's the tension in the song.
yeah. And it's a really fun song.
That's the main
So
thing for me. It's
yeah,
fun. It's fun to sing. Kind of came
exactly.
together.
And I think it's gonna really do well live, of course, whenever you do decide to take your ragtag group of people who helped make this album. You said
Well,
Ryan Poley. He
right.
seemed like he did a really great job with a lot of different things. I was
So
checking out his Instagram page too.
yeah, Ryan is amazing. And if you're gonna say Los Angeles as a genre, might be one way I put it in there. Ryan is kind of known for being this East LA magnet for great music, and um, his I met him uh, not last October, but what years? 23, October 23, at a modular synthesizer event, like a little outside street show in Eagle Rock, where he lives and where I actually grew up. Um, and I think I shot some video of him playing a weird little drone synth that he had. So I thought he was like a synthesizer person. And then because I posted that on Instagram and wanted to tag him on it, I started following him.
Hmm.
And a little while later, I saw a post from him that he was looking to do some more recording sessions. So I'm like, oh, this guy is a producer. So I started listening to the stuff that he produced, and it just was absolutely perfect for the stuff that I was wanting to start working on. And like he Ryan organizes music, and he runs a bunch of band. He's in a bunch of bands. He's got all these music projects going on. He's sort of a center of a huge group of amazing musicians in Los Angeles, and he kind of a genre in himself. Like his stuff has a quality to it. Like having made that whole album basically in his studio / living room, I can hear that room in other stuff that he's produced, and it's just got this. Oh, I know that tambourine. I know that reverb. That's the walls of his studio. It just gives everything this kind of great unity. Like I know Ryan will pull in some great musicians to make a song come together, and he's got the space, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to sound amazing. So,
That's cool that you're able to utilize him and stuff. So hopefully maybe he can break away from what he's doing and maybe help with playing live along with you, or
oh,
help
he's
find
yeah,
some people
yeah.
that could do that with you. That'd be really
That's what
cool.
we're doing it right now. Ryan, we've got the beginnings of a band to at least do one or two sets of some of the songs on the album.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ryan is 100%. I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do now? He's
He-
very encouraging. He knows what he's doing. It's gonna be awesome.
that is going to be cool. I'm looking forward to hearing when you're going to announce those shows and stuff. I'll definitely be reposting about it and promoting those. I think it's going to be really big turnout. I think more people need to hear this record. It's a very good record. But I do want to ask you, so when you approach the creative process of writing these new tracks that you were doing, do you normally like to begin with like the writing of like lyrics, or do you do melodies, or is there any specific concepts that you bring to the table, or is it kind of like a mixture of all of these things just at the same time?
It's a mixture and it's different for every song. Usually I start off with without an idea without a lyrical idea, and I just kind of look for a sound and a song that I like. Like uh again, it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about music is it doesn't push any of the old creative buttons for me. Like writing fiction, I would have to have the idea kind of fully formed if I would sit down and write that, before I even type the first letter of the story. And the way music is, it would be if I could sit down at a typewriter and just type a bunch of letters and go, those are cool letters. I think, what if I put a B after this C? That sounds really great. I can't do that in writing. So, but I could sit down at a keyboard and I could sit down at the synth and turn on, start recording and immediately find, oh, I like that sound. Where's that go? And then,
Mm.
hey, this sound kind of comes with that. And now those two together are amazing. And then within 5 minutes, if things are going well,
Hmm.
there's a little earworm and there's like there's a melody that didn't exist or a mood. There's no equivalent for me that I've ever found in anything else, like writing or any kind of design work. So I kind of never know. I could sit down without an idea for a song and find something musically, and that's a super fun way to work. And definitely when I'm just totally in the DAW, that's kind of what I do. Um, but every now and then I'll have like a line uh, or an assignment. Like I've taken a few songwriting classes, and the assignment might be, here's some chords that you never would play. So play them together and see what happens. And so first musically a song will come and that gets structure, and then I like working that way where I know I'll enjoy listening to this song. Let me see what kind of words will emerge from it. And the words come out as gibberish
Yeah.
often. And then the gibberish slowly gets a wrapper of, phonemes and words around it. And then sometimes those turn into sentences that make sense. Sometimes they're just words as sounds, and that's great too. So every now and then I will get I have an idea for a song or a title or a chorus, and I'll sit down and I'll get a few lines of that and then go looking for a melody that goes with it. Um, that always feels like, even if I'm really happy with the lyrics of the song, I'm always I worry that maybe the music's not as good as it would be if I had started with the music. And again, the music has got to be the first thing that I would hope pull people in. Like you, even in a pretty dense lyrical song, you have to hope somebody's going to listen to, a few bars of it without any lyrics and want to hear more of that.
Yeah.
So that when the lyrics come in, even if they're like, oh, I don't know about this person's voice, but I want to hear everything else.
Yeah. I would say the opening track on the record, Haunted Honey, gives that. It's very enchanting but painful. It's dreary. It has kind of sounds. I don't know if you've ever listened to this band, but it's a band called The Shins. They
Oh
have
yeah.
that kind of like indie. There's like that indie element that you were reaching for in that opening track, and I feel like you well achieved it. And it's such a great strong track to like open the record with following into like Impatiently as well, with these awesome atmospheric horns and dynamic swells and stuff that you're giving that portray through that song. And I love, like you were saying, the instrumentation and how you presented these tracks are absolutely perfect. Like it's perfect. It's perfection, at least to someone like me who enjoys these interesting elements that kind of develop into what you're creating. Um, but yeah, it's really cool.
Well, thanks. That one, Haunted, deciding to go with Haunted Honey as the first track was partly because those opening notes are amazing. Um, just as a guitar, a sound that kind of sets the tone. And
Mm.
I played with every combination of songs to start the album. At one point, Haunted Honey was the last one or second to last, and I've had it be second. But ultimately, I just couldn't get past I first I was always really happy with the imagery and the lyrics the and the singing on the song came out pretty well. But the thing that was kind of out of my control was how amazing this guitar sounds, and that was Haunted Honey was Leo Dolan, who plays in an amazing band, Finnish Postcard, and he just did incredible things with the guitar. So my memory is terrible, so I'm like
No,
going,
you're
I hope this was Leo and not something else.
yeah,
Uh,
that's okay. Shout
anyway,
out both of them. That's okay.
everybody, and on Bandcamp, all the credits are there. So
Yes.
please look at like Will Fox played guitar on
Hmm.
Mama and guitar and bass. These people are amazing
Yeah.
musicians in their own rights, and they all have great music coming out all the time. So don't stop here. Go, do the footnotes and look at who's playing on the album because I did very little musically. I did some harmonicas on New Now, which is just like, oh, I got it right here. It's just the
Hey, there it
cheapest,
is.
crappiest harmonica I got at the
But it still
music
sounds
shop.
great. It sounds hey.
So it does one note.
Yeah, but it
uh,
still sounded great on that track. The new now, I love that track.
it's perfect just for that. I can't get rid of this harmonica. I would like to, but I have to keep it around for that song.
Yeah, you got to use it for
Um,
the live show now.
but I had a music teacher, Scarlett Keys, who I did an online workshop with summer before last, and I wrote Haunted Honey for her class.
Mm.
Um, and she said, "Oh, if you do an album, that has to be the first track." And at the
Wow.
time, it was like me playing an acoustic thing, but she saw something there. I know she said she really liked the chorus, and I mean, the lyrics really didn't change much from her class, but Scarlett was actually she's a great, fun music teacher, and she teaches at Berklee School of Music. She also does her own workshops, and at the end of this class that we did, there was a dozen of us or 20 of us in the class. We wrote a handful of songs, and she said, "Okay, you guys, you have your songs now. Go out and find a producer, do a demo album with you, and ask them if they want to work. Find somebody you like who does music sort of like you think fits what you're doing, and ask them." And all of us kind of looked at each other like, "What? That's how you do this?"
Yeah.
So it seemed really like, "Oh, I can't do that." And then, as I mentioned, I met a couple months later. I met Ryan,
Mhm.
and suddenly, like the light went off. I'm like, "Oh, this is what Scarlett was talking about." Because maybe if I reach out to this person who has this sound, they can help me get what I'm doing to what I hear in my head and would like it to be.
Yeah.
So it again, I've been figuring this out as I go since like the middle of 2020, and it's all teachers, classes, online schools like School of Song, which is an online community that's fantastic. I've taken songwriting classes. I'm taking a production class that starts tomorrow about how to do home studio recording, and they had a workshop Brian Eno taught.
Oh wow.
Laraji taught a workshop. Sam Evian did a whole course. That was the first songwriting class I took with them, and just some of these songs came out of these classes. Some predate the album, some happened while I was recording the album.
Yeah.
So the album was like a 6-month project, and then I started with just a few songs, and then as I was going and learned how the whole production process worked, I started kind of looking back into older songs I'd written, and then some new songs that came together with what I had learned working with Ryan. So, uh, I Can't Be Trusted, which is in a lot of ways my favorite song on the album because I was there when it happened. And it was that we'd done a few sessions and I had a plan we were going to do one of my older songs like on a Monday or whatever. And on
Hmm.
the weekend, I wrote this one song and that turned into I Can't Be Trusted. And I did it really roughly on acoustic guitar. And then the next day I wrote to Ryan. I'm like, I know we had a plan for Monday, but I think I want to drop the plan and do this new thing just to see what it's like to to work on something where the paint is still wet. Like I'm still
Yeah.
coming up with this, and let's figure it out. And so the two of us did that whole song that in one day in his studio. Most of these songs happen in one day, like, but usually I had a lot more time with the song before I brought it in to him.
Got you.
Um, and that was pretty much our model. We would do a song a day. Every now and then I would uh, do like rough audio the first time through, and then on a separate session I would do like the final vocals. Um, and and then we really got amazingly lucky. One of my favorite bands in LA is called Wolf Trap,
Wolf Trap.
and it's Miguel and Bailey. So Bailey made Gardner. I love Wolf Trap stuff, and Ryan had wanted to work with them, and I actually thought Ryan produced their. He has produced some of their songs since, but at the time, I thought he produced Wolf Trap. So Ryan said, we could always invite Bailey to come and sing backing on these tracks.
Yeah.
So we
And
did, and she said yes, and
yeah.
she came and did magic, like Haunted Honey and what she did on Weird Little Hill, and I Can't Be Trusted. She added like these eerie harmonies to it.
Yeah.
Just fantastic.
I
Anyway,
was
also
gonna I was
go
gonna
listen to Wolf Trap. They're amazing.
Yeah, I have them actually here on my notes and stuff.
Oh, great.
So because you listed her in the song credits for vocals, and you have the Wolf Trap YouTube channel right next to her name. So that's great. I mean, I definitely heard her voice in the background, and I thought it was interesting having those backing tracks with, like how you said, it has like that eeriness that's kind of there at certain songs and certain times. Like I Can't Be Trusted and stuff. Like those tracks were really good.
Weird Little Hill is another one that kind of plays with narrative. Like at some point,
Hmm.
there's the voice of the spirit of the hill,
Yeah.
and that it was the hardest thing in the world because for storytelling purposes, I didn't really want to hear Bailey until the line that that spirit is speaking.
Hmm.
But her voice is so great. I wanted her all over the whole thing, but no, we
Yeah,
must be restrained and hold back. It'll be even better if we use it sparingly.
I agree. I think it's good that you took that notion and did that. And I love that song as well too, the Haunted Little Hill. I like it because does that correlate with like your profile picture that you have at the bottom of your Bandcamp profile, where I think you have like a jokingly, it's like an image of you with like a Korg synthesizer, and it says, "I'm gonna go hike mountains" or something. Like
Oh, I like
I
mountains
saw
and
that.
caves.
Yeah, I like mountains and caves. Yeah, that
I
was what it was.
I noticed that a lot of my songs have references to climbing and going up, yeah, on mountains or going deep into caves. I mean,
Yeah.
I do like mountains and caves, and I've always been fascinated with like Journey to the Center of the Earth, and um, I've got a poem that I set to music called The Second Descent, which is all about climbing a mountain. But that song particularly, that that song I have to say was probably the seed for this album, Weird Little
Hmm.
Hill. Um, I had I just moved back to LA and I was taking a drive in from Palm Desert, Palm Springs, and I realized how often on it was just alone, kind of a road trip, desolate road trip moment, looking at this landscape and realizing how many times I've driven through little towns where there's always some one weird little hill like on the outskirts. And I always want to go up there, like, what's up on the hill? What do how's the world look from up there?
Yeah.
Um, And I just had that one image and I wanted to write a song about it, but I couldn't figure out how. I had no idea. So a few months later, I took a Berkeley School of Music, one of their Berkeley online classes on songwriting. And it kind of it's like 12 weeks. And I think you write 12 songs in the class. And then
Okay.
they introduce different kind of structures for writing pop tunes.
Of course.
Um, And on the third week, the structure was like, oh, this is Weird Little Hill. This was the thing I was looking for, structuring this idea so it has a progression. It starts somewhere and ends somewhere. But in that song too, it's like the vocal climbing, it just goes up and up and up toward the end, and you kind of hear the hills in the music.
Hmm.
So at some point later in the album, I'm like, oh, I do this a lot. So that was like my sort of teasing myself about it, reducing my biography to I like mountains and caves.
Yeah. And I love that. I think it's great how, it translates
Highs
from
and the
that,
lows.
yeah, the highs and the lows of the imagery of you with this Korg synthesizer on this adventure to find these weird little mountains that you see all the time. So that's pretty awesome. I like that a lot. Did you have any part or say in the visual elements of the music video New Now when it, I see that you worked here with this director animator
Callie
Callie.
Fontecchio. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got, so it's funny. The last time, one of the few times I've done a podcast like this, the previous one was with Callie. She's got a podcast. And I was on there last year and I was already a fan of her music. We have the same, so a different producer. Another project of mine is called Mort Solar,
Hmm.
and it's just me and my friend Mike, and it's sort of a synth project. And our producer on that is Toshi Kasai, who's also like the chosen producer engineer for the Melvins and a bunch
Oh,
of
wow.
great bands.
I love the
So
Melvins.
so I had done Mike with Mort Solar. We'd done 2 EPs with Mort Solar, and Toshi also produces Callie. So I
Mm.
started listening to her music, fell in love with her music. It's amazing. And I knew that she was an animator, illustrator. She's kind of all around, does all kinds of stuff. So after doing this podcast, I got to know Callie a little bit, and I needed a music. I wanted a music video for at least one of the songs. So, and I know they can't be too long because, especially in animation, every second, is a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I picked a couple of the shorter songs and I just asked her which one she would like to do. And she heard something in that, which I realized later what she was hearing was horse hooves, which
Yeah.
I had not myself heard. But she's like, she immediately got some idea in her head, and I just went, okay, sounds good. Do whatever you like. I'm sure it'll
Run
be
with it.
awesome.
Yeah.
And when I think she showed me some storyboards that she did. I'm like, fine, it's going to be great. But when she did the first rough of the full finished video and the horse is running along, I'm like, oh, now I know what you heard in it. Like I didn't hear it. So I didn't want to interfere visually on that level. I just like I'd rather find people whose work I like and just let them run with it and not get involved too much. Like I don't want to mess up the magic.
Yeah.
So a lot of my favorite artists, I'll be like, oh, I'd love to work with them on stuff, but I also don't want to have to give direction that then loses that magic that this is the reason that I like their stuff. So
Yeah.
I try not to give. It's similarly with the cover.
Hmm.
Spike Milliken did the cover. I was a huge fan of his drawings, and he's
Hmm.
a San Francisco artist, really prolific. His stuff is incredible, and I don't quite remember why I thought Spike would be perfect for this, other than I was seeing his drawings every day. Um, but as soon as I finished the album, I think I had that concept after the Pulse, and I asked him if he'd want to work on it. He was in the middle of getting ready for a big showing of his work. But in the middle of that, we went through some concept art, and then within the week, he had done that finished cover for it. And to me, it just has everything. It's got this kind of suburban malaise. It's spooky, but it's also mundane.
Hmm.
It's like regular. It could be anywhere. It has a little bit of the Hawaii vibe. It actually, the palm trees could be anywhere because palm trees are everywhere now. It could be Florida or
Yep.
California or Kauai or anywhere. So
Yep.
um, to me, it just helps set the mood. I mean, you asked if I was involved with the art, the visuals. I did
Yeah.
everybody's on this because I chose them to be on it. Like
Yeah.
there's been no I went through this with my writing already. Is like I guess I'm in the world of self-publishing now, whether I want to be or not.
Hmm.
But I'm always it. I mean, I know a lot of artists and a lot of creative people, and I love to find. You know, I know artists who use AI in interesting ways, but
Hmm.
I don't want to just get a Mid-Journey subscription and spit out a
No.
cover. I'd rather find somebody whose art I love and say, "Hey, I'd be super honored and love to commission you to do something for this if we can figure it out." So
Yeah.
that's how the video worked out. And uh, I know Kali is an awesome animator on her own, and it was great to. She was free at the time to be able to do this, but super special. And I would love to work with more animators and stuff like that in the future. And videographers. I've got some friends who make music videos, and we've been talking about doing some very low key projects just for fun.
There you go. You're continuing your quest to conquer all mediums.
Well,
That's what you
I'm
seem to
getting
be
back.
on.
I think I do feel like I've learned how to kind of put together a team and reach out to people that like instead of I mean it's hard, it's kind of nerve-wracking to reach out to people to see if they would want to work with you on something, but so far it's worked out great, and I've learned to trust that thing. I worked in team design for a long time when I worked on video games, and I got better at like pulling people in and being part, like we're all we're all contributing to a larger vision, and everybody's can bring something different to that. That's what makes it amazing. So I've had that experience now in music in a way that I felt like when I retired, that was the saddest thing, was like, oh, I
Yeah.
miss working with people. And so now I've found a way to kind of make that, I've tried to center my life around that creatively, even though I love doing stuff solo and there's some stuff I could do in my DAW that I don't know how to do with a bunch of external instruments and other people. So I still kind of enjoy that collage and cut and paste music thing, but I also I get so much out of working with other people, and plus the community is going to shows and hanging out with people and sitting, in a studio with people and going to watch my friends play. It's all kind of part of the deal. It's fun.
Yeah. It's almost like since your retirement from the video games, you've almost gotten back in touch with your inner childlike self, and
For
you're
sure.
interacting with a whole new community of people that are rallying for, success. And there's nothing but success here at this finish line for this record, because this record has a wonderful sound. I love the visuals of, the album art that you worked with and chose, and of course the visual elements that were made for that video. It almost pays homage to your career for video games. When I'm watching that video, I feel like I'm watching like the Oregon Trail or something. Like that's what it reminds me of. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if he, was influenced by his past with video games, and that's why he like came up with this as part of the video. But it's not at all. You just basically, handed it off, and this person interpreted it in their own way, and they gave it back to you, and you said, wow, this is wonderful. I love this. And that's wonderful. I
Yeah.
think that's super cool. So you're inspiring all different types of people to come together and continue going forward. I think that's,
I
that's good.
it's partly I don't know if it's a mission, like a one person mission, but it did start to bother me some years back. Well, so I kind of also come out of the old cyberpunk school of a bunch of my friends were cyberpunk writers back in the day and still are. But Bruce Sterling wrote this book that was about science fiction novel about a near future in which longevity is just a fact of life. Like older people live longer and healthier and they have longer lives. And it's like when you get older, and if this happens in our society, that people get much older and you go through these phases of reinvention and rediscovering, and also how do you, instead of sort of shutting down your life at the end,
Hmm.
how do you find new stuff to open it out? I mean, so much music. I'm a person who I don't really listen to old music that I liked when I was a kid. I can appreciate it, but I feel like every nerve ending that ever could respond to that music has already done that.
Yeah.
So it's just a thing. I think I've heard this more common with musicians, but you know, most people like to listen to the stuff that reminds them of their past. But for me, a lot of the songs, so much of the music industry, of course, is about being young and, high school and being a teenager and in your 20s. And I love all that stuff and I loved it then. But uh, I just started wondering, well, what do you do when are you still listening to those songs? And are you writing and singing those songs when you're 70, 80, 90? And what are people listening to in that age? What if we're 100 years old? Are you still singing? Are you pretending you're in high school and these are what your song's about?
Yeah.
Like you've had other life experiences. And so for me, it was kind of an interesting, a few years ago, I'm like, I really didn't know if I could pull it off. And it felt just like hubris to go, well, maybe I'll try to do music next. Maybe I could be good at that. But I, I did it kind of feeling like maybe maybe we can do more, maybe more people my age will want to try this and listen to new stuff and want to put things out there that have more. I mean, I'm not writing about being old or anything. I feel like a lot of the songs that I love are kind of like ageless, or they're
Timeless.
writing more universal experiences, or right again, like you just pick a motif like it's the American road trip song, or
Yeah.
the haunted. It's a ghost story. Those things that
Hmm.
are a little bit mythic, or they're not so much about the moment to moment experience. I mean, I could write a song about going out and get coffee today, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that'd be fun. But
It's true.
you don't have to be any particular age to write a song or to listen to a song. It's been interesting on Spotify to look at the self-identified age demographics, because when I was defining my target audience, if I put anything that was like 65 plus there,
Yeah.
the only responses I got on like Instagram
Yeah.
were granny bots. It was like all fake old people with pictures of kitties and roses.
Wow.
So, but the actual demographic on Spotify seems to be, mid 20s to mid 40s. And I feel like, okay, that's where people are still kind of discovering new music and
Yeah.
enjoying new music. I feel like a lot of people, not my personal friends, but a lot of people my age, they're still listening to the same stuff that they listened to, what,
Yeah.
40 years ago. I'm like, guys, there's all this new music coming out every day.
I
Look
think
around.
I think it's very interesting that you bring that to light. It personally, just to shout out my age, like I'm in my late 20s, almost 30s, and I believe like what you're saying is very similar. So millennials, they're classified as like these pop punk emo kids, and they have like their own music festival now that's like annually every year. It's When We Were Young Music Fest. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's in Las Vegas. It takes place every year. And there's always Vans Warp Tour too, that's always happening all around the country. And then that recently stopped, but now they're redoing it again. um, so it's very interesting to see how each I guess you could say decade has like their moment in music that seems to always kind of haunt them or follow them wherever they go. And some people, they're just always into that and they never stop being into it, and they never come out of that cloud and realize like, hey, there's so many other things that are going on in all these other different genres and aspects. And ultimately, that's kind of why I made the podcast, is because
Yeah.
I think more people need to know about all these other artists and stuff, and know that there's all these different genres that even exist.
Well, your emphasis on festivals and stuff and covering those is really interesting. I just realized I had this insight the other night. Like, I think I'm not a big festival person. I'm more of a house show person.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, I can't walk around all day back and forth between a bunch of stages. And I'd rather go somewhere that I could see a couple bands that
Yeah.
that I really like, or I'll discover some bands that I'm probably going to love in a smaller environment than go hear the classic guys play like where they can only play like 45 minutes because the next band's coming and the next band's, and then meanwhile the other one I really want to hear is on the quarter mile away that way.
Kind of like
Excuse me.
Coachella, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
Coachella, I've never been to Coachella, but
yeah, nor have
that
I.
that one has always escaped me. They just never have the lineup for me to want to go personally, but um, I've always seen plenty of like movies and media coverage and everything like that on the festival. It's huge. It's gigantic how big that festival is, and how everything is spaced out, and plus you
I'd
have to
like to
camp
see it
for it.
once.
So
I'm too lazy to like set up. I can't imagine camping in a field at this point,
right,
but
yeah,
maybe someday. But usually those, for instance, Beth Gibbons from Portishead was coming to
yes,
town, and it's like they announced she's at Coachella, and I love her new album, and I'm like, oh God, I guess I'm not gonna go to Coachella to see Beth Gibbons.
yeah,
And then a little while after that, she just announced some shows in town.
yeah.
So okay, good. I can get a ticket for that. But
Hmm.
that's what I will go to the bigger festival if I totally miss the chance to get the smaller venue. But
Yeah, and surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize that they'll think like, okay, maybe this artist is only playing at Coachella. No, that's not usually the case. Usually, the artist wants to capitalize on as many areas as they can and stuff, so they know that they're already committed to playing that festival. So if they can play some other late night sets, or maybe if they're playing earlier that day at the festival, they'll definitely play somewhere else later that evening or something. So they try to capitalize on it as much as they can to, maximize their own profits before they move on to whatever else they're going to.
someday I'll catch that Lana Del Rey house show. That's what I'm living for now.
Lana Del Rey house show. That's interesting. I mean, you'd probably catch her at a Waffle House before
It's
that happens,
yeah,
probably.
it's probably her house. Yeah, the Waffle House show. I'll go out for that.
Yeah, go out for some waffles. So you mentioned that some collaborative influences and stuff. Is there anybody that you wish that you could collaborate on a future album or track and stuff? You've been working with so many different people and stuff.
I don't. That doesn't really drive me in terms of a specific thing, but I do. What does drive me is getting my vision of something done and out there so other people can hear it, and then kind of seeing, well, who responds to that and who relates to that and who would want to work with me. That's kind of what I'd be more curious about. Like, um, I don't know. I'm not really pursuing anything. I meet friends around here, and we talk about doing stuff together, and I'm just happy to pretty much everybody that Ryan has brought in to play in sessions of mine has become a friend, and I'm happy to play with all of these people because they're my peers. I feel
Yeah,
like everybody kind of comes up within a community, and then I don't quite trust the thing of partly it's that thing I mentioned earlier where I kind of don't want to mess with something that I love. Like if there's an artist that I love their stuff so much, I'd be a little worried. Like, what if I see behind the magic and it sucks? Like, and it
yeah,
totally ruins that for me. Whereas I feel like if I'm kind of more natural responding to people in my environment, we'll do stuff together if it works out.
yeah.
And right now, that's fun enough for me.
Yeah, so it sounds like you definitely want to stay homegrown and interact with the community that you're currently experiencing and exposed to. So that
And well,
sounds really good.
there's so much to learn. I mean, it's not about I'd love to do something with some big artist. It's about, man, I'd love to learn. It's I'd love to be like a creative fly on the wall in some of these production environments, like because I there's a lot I figured out on my own, but I still feel like the model where in the old days you would work in a studio as like a gopher, and gradually the old codgers explain to you what you're doing and why, and you come out of that with a whole musical production education
Yeah,
that I wish I had more of that. And I love a lot of like the very produced studio creative electronic stuff with people who really know what they're doing. I'd love to do all that, but I don't have infinite time, so I'm pretty happy finding little inroads like that. I'm I'm trying to figure out ways to merge like the solo electronic stuff that I do
Yeah.
um, with the more lyrical stuff that is on After the Pulse.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there where I can, when I go out and play, like I do, I'm part of the Los Angeles Synth Club, and we do group shows,
Wow.
and we have these venues we go to and play regular shows and open mics, and that's always about how much gear can I bring along and play a solo set, like
Yeah.
with a sequencer and a drum machine and a few different things. That's already enough. I'm always trying to simplify that, but I want to add lyrics and vocals to that. But it's another level of performance production stuff that it's like it's a little too much for me because I'm still not really comfortable just with the hardware aspect. So maybe that's the result of finding the right person to help me figure out some of that, or it's just getting more simplifying my setup, or I know how to do that in the studio, I think, but doing it live is kind
It's
of
different.
overwhelming.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very overwhelming because there's lots of different elements that you're able to add as layers in the studio. But portraying that live, you got to have either more machineware or, let a
Or
computer run it.
I
So
think if you're just a really charismatic and comfortable performer, you can
that
pull it
too.
off. I mean, I've definitely seen shows where the person is on stage with a mic and everything is canned, and I don't miss the band because they're so good. Um, and then Sleaford Mods, do you know them?
I don't actually.
So
I'll
I
check
saw
them out.
them. It's two guys, and one is like the beat master, and I think the thing is he's created all the loops on the laptop, and the
Okay.
other guy is just sings and talks. So I saw them play at the Crocodile in Seattle, and the first thing that happened was that the lights came on. It was just a laptop sitting on a little podium with the spotlight on it. And so and then there's the singer and there's the guy who composed the beats, and he kind of dances near the laptop and he triggers clips, I think.
Hmm.
Super entertaining show. And I've seen plenty of people just they didn't want to travel with drums and all that, and it's expensive and it's hard to lug that stuff around, and they put on a great show. But there are other times where I've like I miss that, and I miss the other people, and I miss the band. And it's not even the fault of the performer. There's just so many variables the more things you have that you can't control. It's all a new world for me. Though, say I'm just starting to figure out, can I get a band together and play like a little show and figure out how, if I like it, or if is this not for me, or is it great?
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
have
I think
many
it's great
learning
that
curves.
you put it like that. Because I would say for me, for the 10 plus years that I've been going to live music shows and whatnot all around America, I would say out of one thing I've learned from every single artist, it's very interesting how you can design your own black box, right? So everybody stands up in this black box, and however they design it and create it, it's their own world, It's however they make the black box look that makes it them. And if you always remember that at the end of the day, it's always just a black box and you can make it whatever you want it to be. The canvas is yours. It's just how you want to design it and make it. So kind of like that artist that you were talking about that played at the Crocodile, they just used a laptop and had some fun, on stage, just the two of them. And then there's other people that are out here traveling with like giant full scale production,
Yeah.
doing, Beyonce like style crazy stuff. And it's just like, where's the medium lie with you, like that's where you have to ask yourself, I guess, as an artist, and what you want to bring.
Yeah. And I don't, it's because it's all new. I mean, I've learned not to rush into stuff too fast and not to think you need too much stuff to do something that might turn out to be really simple. So
Yeah.
I try to take it a little at a time.
That's awesome. I think that's good that you're taking steps through this process to grow and develop into your next chapter, which is live music of making this album for other people to be able to enjoy and indulge. I was going to ask separately this question though. You were saying that you wrote most of these songs as synths the first time around, like on synthesizers and whatnot. Are you planning to release maybe like a extended cut of the record, or maybe a secondary record that is the same songs but it's just in synthesizer format?
I've been looking at, first of all, my organizational skills are terrible. So in some
Me
places I
too.
can't actually find my old recordings of demos. I was gonna just on Bandcamp uh put an album of the demos out that would have like, here's the earliest versions of some of these, because you can find them, most of them you can find on YouTube right now, but I think on Bandcamp I could at least get the quality to be a little better, and I can get them all mastered so they live together, and then put that on Bandcamp for $1 or $2, something like that.
Yeah.
Because even though all these versions, I guess they're archaeological interest, because they've never sounded better than they sound on the album. But there's some interesting like tonal stuff, like in Solaris, like, oh, there was this one sound I got out of the pedal and guitar that day. Totally can never be recovered,
Recreated.
but
Yeah.
it's recorded, so I'll just put that out there as like sort of a behind the scenes, the rough notes.
Yeah.
I think I when I was into a band, I would love to listen to the demos, and
Yes.
the old days, finding bootlegs of shows people recorded, or so one of my first real favorite artists was Elvis Costello, and
Awesome.
it was years later, somebody had a thing that was his cassette tape recording of like early bedroom recordings of his, and some of
Yeah.
these songs, it was like a handful of songs, but some of them he continued to do later, and some you never heard again. And
Mm.
I just remember I was so excited to hear those. So
Yeah.
I don't think my stuff is that of that interest, but for me, it'd be fun to have it all in one place. Like, and Bandcamp is great for throwing that stuff up there.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's great to have more than just the original out. It's fun to hear different iterations and to see how like the song evolved into what it becomes. Um,
We're
it's interesting, like the metamorphosis of a song, how it like kind of takes place.
we're also really fixated as a society, thanks to like music recording technology. I mean, I didn't realize this until I started recording music, how we're just totally fixed on one version of a song because it was the one we heard, that
Yes,
was the one they did in the studio that
yes,
day, like in some cases accidentally. And um, because of that, when you sing and you put a song together, you feel like, oh, I need to be, it has to be iconic somehow. Like I have to do the perfect version of this. But in fact, when we listen to the versions we have ingrained in our head of classic songs, they're only iconic because we've listened to them so many times. And
we've put
I've
them on
kind of
this
loosened up
imaginary
now.
like
Like,
pedestal. Yeah,
yeah, but even the performer themselves could never played it the same way twice. So
exactly.
now I just love, like, okay, here was the version I got for the album, but I'm not going to try to imitate that version. Every time you do it, it's a kind of a different variation. I think that's kind of the fun of doing a live show, is like, okay, well, how would I do this now? This is how I did the song a year ago, but the musicians are different. I'm different. Uh, Everything's different. So what's it going to be now? How do you do this when you don't have any like studio effects
Yeah.
or these
It's
things?
it's almost
So
like conducting a science project almost. You have like an idea of what the control is, and then now you have all these different variables and you're trying to keep it out of control.
yeah, and you guys, everybody knows how this sounds on the album, but you're
Yeah,
here to hear something different.
precisely. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna round out with this last question here for us, but looking ahead, are there new musical directions or projects you're excited to explore? What can fans anticipate from you in the coming years?
Well, as I said, I'd love to figure out a way to get a little more of the synth and the electronic stuff in there. There's just a little taste of it in After the Pulse. And that's partly just down to my own musicianship. I need to figure out how to add these elements in there. And um, I've been listening to a lot of the band Broadcast lately, and
Hmm.
I'm like, this is just what I want to do. They were doing this all 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, just in terms of texture and electronic textures with really cool poetic sound writing too.
Hmm.
Um, so that's something to explore. I'm going to keep doing the synth stuff and try to see if I can start adding vocals into that. I I already recorded another song a week ago with Ryan. Um, Again, I took a Brian Eno class with School of Song a few last month, and um, even though he spent a couple weeks talking about how he doesn't really like lyrics in songs, he doesn't like things that get in the way of the music.
Yeah.
The final assignment of the song was like write a very lyrically dense song like of modern resistance, like
Hmm.
where are the protest songs of our day that are about like the digital overlords and the attention economy and trying to find a human way through all this stuff. So he had everybody. The assignment was write a song people could sing with like a singable chorus. Take the first melody that comes in your head. Keep it really simple. No instrumental breaks. He had this list of things that he wanted us to do. So I wrote a very very simple melody and a kind of simple song. And then after writing it, I'm like, well, I haven't written a song in a while. So what happens if I go into the studio? So we got cello, violin, accordion, piano, bass. Um, went and sang that with like Ryan and three other musicians last week, and that's going to come out as a single in about a month. So I think for a little while, I'll put out singles and keep experimenting and exploring. But some of that will be my weird electronic solo stuff, and some will definitely be continuing to work with Ryan and these guys, and just kind of exploring the social communal band aspect of music writing as well.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, if that goes well, I will start to see another idea for an album or some songs that will start to come together for an album.
I
But
like that.
side projects, I'm always looking for fun stuff to do, and
Of course, because that's
I
what
don't. It's
that's
not
what
my
it's
day.
about.
I don't have to really worry like that. I, I mean, it's just what I feel like doing. So I'm. I don't. I'm not too worried about. I don't feel like uh, I have to do something because somebody has told me I have to do it. I get to explore, so I'll keep doing that.
Yes, you get to keep exploring the unknown of what music is and what it can be through your education and learnings. I think it's awesome that you're taking a class through Brian Eno as well. Like he's a legend in his own right, and I mean he's definitely
School of
composed
Song.
some great works of music. Yeah,
Yeah, go on School of Song. I think. Let me see if it's a .org.
this is an ad.
There.
It's an ad now.
Yeah, it's an ad. School of Song. They do these amazing workshops and have great teachers, and it's all online. I've just had a lot of fun doing their classes.
Excellent. Yeah, you sound like a good student and a great learner. You know, you're definitely practicing what you've been taught. So you're putting it, it's just kind of like swinging. You're
Yeah,
swinging while you're on through it.
I love to hear. I'd love to find a new like learning curve and
You
start
will.
to learn.
You definitely will. I mean, it sounds like to me, you're battling two different things. You have this element where you love being around people and bringing this like live acoustic slash maybe a little bit technological sound. But then when you're alone, you find yourself with like all these interesting like digital sounds, and you're working with analog synths and trying to discover and learn how to utilize that in its own right. And then you're in the middle here trying to bridge that gap. So eventually you're going to find a way to be able to make those two work together, and you can release that as your own album, and
I
that's going
hope
to be
so.
what's next.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great. That's kind of what I would love to do that because it's easy to experiment alone and do that
Yeah.
kind of exploration. It takes a little while longer to find the people who will have the patience for that. Like,
Yeah.
which is a lot of collaboration is just trusting people to go through the stages where it's not great. And
Yeah.
you got to go through that to get to the good stuff, which you have to do that with people for a while before you understand how you guys understand as a group how it all works.
Yeah. It's all about the chemistry of combining these elements together and, coming together over this agreement to actually record it. So,
Well,
and make it something you want it to be.
I really appreciate your support and putting the album on your playlist and inviting me to come talk about it. It's
Yes,
just
and
very,
I greatly
very
appreciate
exciting.
you interacting with the podcast and myself and coming on and talking about the amazing
Oh, my
record.
pleasure.
So
100%.
it's been an absolute blast having you on, and thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful stories too.
Thanks,
So,
Cody.
all right, that's a do it here for today for Crispy Reviews Podcast. Remember to like, follow, share, and all those fun things that we have to do to stay social online. But I've been Crispy, and he's been Mark. I hope you have
I'm
a
Mark.
great day. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.